Follow the story of a father who decides to investigate his son's concerns about his stepmother. With the help of a hidden camera, the father intends to uncover the truth about what's happening at home. What he finds in the recordings is something he never expected. Get ready for a moment of great surprise and unexpected revelations. Make sure to click and subscribe so you don't miss any of our real-life stories. The story begins in a charming suburban house where the soft afternoon sunlight illuminates the scene with a warm and comforting glow. João, a middle-aged man with a kind gaze and a welcoming smile, is in a phase of his life that should be filled with happiness and renewal. Recently married to Clara, his second wife, he believes that this new chapter will bring the stability and joy that he and his son Lucas desperately need. João is a dedicated father who has always done his best to raise Lucas with love and care after the death of his first wife. His job as an engineer takes up a significant part of his life, but he always strives to be present for the important moments in his son's life. His dedication is evident in how he carefully plans every detail of their family life, from small traditions to big decisions. Clara, his new wife, is an elegant woman full of energy, with a strong personality and a joyful spirit. At first glance, she seems like the perfect addition to João's life. She actively engages in household activities, helping to reorganize the rooms and bringing new vibrant decor to the home. However, behind her cheerful facade lies a more complicated reality. Little Lucas, only 10 years old, is a boy with light brown hair and large, expressive eyes that reflect a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He's in a delicate phase of his life, transitioning from the loss of his mother to adapting to the presence of a new maternal figure. Despite João's and Clara's efforts to make Lucas feel comfortable, Clara's presence brings a sense of discomfort and insecurity to the boy. Lucas feels displaced and confused, as if his life is changing too quickly. Clara's arrival not only means a new person in his life, but also the change of routines, the traditions he once knew, and the familiar environment he was accustomed to. He observes Clara with a mixture of distrust and sadness, struggling to understand her place in his life and the impact this new dynamic will have on his future. Although Clara tries to connect with Lucas gently, organizing activities to include him and preparing his favorite meals, the distance between them grows. Lucas, with his childlike sensitivity, senses the underlying tension and small flaws in their interactions. His feeling of displacement transforms into a cloud of insecurity that hovers over him, affecting his confidence and behavior. João, despite his desire to make everyone happy and united, begins to notice Lucas's growing concern. He sees the subtle signs of discomfort in his son, the hesitation when answering questions, the reluctance to participate in family activities, and Lucas's isolation, spending more time alone in his room. Lucas's difficulty adapting to this new phase weighs heavily on João's shoulders, leaving him torn between his desire to maintain family harmony and his concern for his son's emotional well-being. One peaceful afternoon, the sun filters through Lucas's bedroom window, casting shadows on the floor. The boy, sitting on the edge of the bed, stares at the ground, his expression one of worry and sadness. The sounds of the house around him seem distant, as if he's in a bubble of discomfort. João, his father, enters the room with a gentle smile and a look of concern. He approaches Lucas, who is visibly upset. "Is everything okay, son?" João asks softly, trying to start a conversation. Lucas, with slumped shoulders and his head down, doesn't respond immediately. He's struggling to find the right words, fearing his concerns may sound exaggerated or unfair. After a moment of silence, Lucas looks up at his father. "Dad," he begins, his voice trembling. I don't feel right. Clara, my stepmother, she's being very harsh with me." His eyes fill with tears that he tries to hold back but ultimately flow down his cheeks. "She's not nice to me. It feels like everything I do is wrong." João sits beside Lucas on the bed, his expression becoming serious and attentive. He can feel the tension in his son's words, the pain in his voice. "What exactly happened, Lucas? Tell me what's making you so sad," he says. Trying to create a safe space for his son to open up, Lucas takes a deep breath. His small hands nervously clasp together. "Well, today, when I spilled juice on the floor, Clara started yelling at me. I know it was an accident, but she spoke to me very rudely. And yesterday, when I asked to play my game, she said I couldn't because I was messing up the living room." Lucas's voice cracks, and he begins to cry more freely, his pain evident. João listens intently, his heart heavy as he watches his son so distressed. He tries to understand the situation without making hasty judgments. "I understand, Lucas. I'll talk to Clara about this," João promises, trying to offer some comfort and assuring Lucas that his concerns are valid. "But it's also important that you always tell me when something bothers you, okay? I want you to feel safe and happy here." The conversation between father and son continues, with João making an effort to listen to every detail with empathy. Lucas feels relieved to finally express his concerns, but also a little anxious about what will happen next. The trust between father and son is strengthened, but the situation with Clara is only beginning to unfold. With a heavy heart, João stands up and kisses Lucas's forehead, promising to resolve the situation. He feels a mix of emotions, concern for his son's well-being, and the need to confront his new wife about what's happening. João walks into the living room, where he begins to ponder the best way to handle the situation, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The morning of the trip arrived, and João's house was in a state of activity and preparation. The day was bright, and the sun's rays filtered through the windows, creating a welcoming and somewhat deceptive atmosphere, contrasting with João's internal turmoil. He was preparing for an important business trip that would take him away for a week, and the thought of leaving them behind weighed heavily on his mind. João knew the trip was crucial for his career, but his growing concern about the situation at home couldn't be ignored. Lucas's recent complaints about Clara had triggered an internal alarm. His son's well-being was a priority he couldn't overlook. He needed to ensure that even while away, Lucas would be safe and protected. With a determined look, João entered his office, where he had prepared a set of discreet equipment. He had decided to install a hidden camera in the house. The device was small and inconspicuous, designed to be almost invisible, yet capable of capturing high-quality footage to reveal the daily dynamics. João knew this decision wasn't made lightly. He wanted to be sure he was doing the best for his son. With the precision of a craftsman working on his masterpiece, João began setting up the camera. He positioned it in a strategic corner of the living room, where it could capture the interactions between Clara and Lucas without being intrusive. The choice of location was made with care. He wanted to ensure the camera wouldn't be easily detected, but could still record crucial moments that would provide a clear view of what was really happening. With time running out before his departure, João focuses on the critical task of positioning the hidden camera in the house. Every movement is calculated with precision, reflecting the seriousness with which he approaches the situation. He knows that to get a clear view of the dynamics between Clara and Lucas, he must ensure that the camera is placed to capture the most important interactions, yet discreet enough not to be noticed. João walks through the house, observing each space carefully. He decides that the best location for the camera is in the living room, a central area where most interactions between Clara and Lucas occur. The room is spacious and multifunctional, serving as a leisure and gathering space. The sofa, coffee table, and surrounding area are frequently used, making them the perfect setting to monitor daily interactions. After careful thought, João chooses a corner above the bookshelf, near a large plant that becomes a perfect disguise for the equipment. He positions the camera at an angle that allows it to capture the main area of the living room without being detected. The choice of the bookshelf is strategic. The plant hides the camera from direct view, but the lens is well positioned to get a clear view of what happens in the room. João ensures the camera's power cord is well hidden behind the books and decorations so that nothing reveals its presence. João makes meticulous adjustments to the camera's settings, ensuring that the field of view covers not only the area where Clara and Lucas typically spend time together, but also any nearby space where important conversations might occur. He runs several tests to check the image quality, adjusting the focus and brightness so the recording remains clear under different lighting conditions. After setting up the camera and ensuring everything is working correctly, João heads to the kitchen, where the housekeeper, Dona Maria, is preparing lunch. She is a trusted woman, having worked with the family for years, and knows the house and its routines well. João approaches her with a serious yet kind expression. "Dona Maria," João begins, "I need to ask you a very important favor. Before I leave, I installed a camera in the living room to help monitor things while I'm away." He explains the situation briefly and carefully, without delving into too many details that might cause discomfort. "I've left the camera set up and ready to record, but I need your help to ensure everything runs as it should." Dona Maria listens attentively, understanding the importance of the situation. João continues, providing clear instructions on how to access the recording system, how to check if the camera is recording properly, and how to access the footage if needed. "The system is simple to use," he explains, "but if you have any questions, let me know before I leave." João also leaves instructions regarding the security of the recordings. "The footage is stored on a secure hard drive," he says, "and I trust you will ensure it remains private and safe. Just notify me if there's any issue." Dona Maria agrees, assuring João that she will follow all instructions and keep an eye on the recording system. She commits to monitoring the camera and maintaining the privacy of the footage with the seriousness the situation requires. With everything in place, João takes one last look around the house, making sure nothing seems out of place. He quickly checks in with Dona Maria to confirm she understands the procedure, and after a brief farewell hug, he heads to the airport. As João boards the plane and the aircraft begins to ascend, the hidden camera in the house activates, capturing each moment of the family routine that unfolds in his absence. The equipment, strategically placed in the living room, starts recording the daily interactions between Clara and Lucas, providing a detailed and honest view of the new family dynamic. The recording begins early the next morning, with the sun's first light filtering through the kitchen windows. Clara, already dressed for the day, is preparing breakfast. She carefully sets the plates and cutlery on the table, making pancakes and bacon while the coffee maker hums in the background. Lucas enters the kitchen looking sleepy, still in his pajamas, with his hair messy. Clara gives him a forced smile and a cheerful "good morning" logically, but Lucas only murmurs in response and sits at the table without enthusiasm. Clara serves breakfast, placing a generous portion on Lucas's plate. She tries to engage him in a conversation about what he plans to do for the day, but he answers with short, distracted responses, staring at his plate. The room is quiet, except for the sound of cutlery and a children's TV channel playing in the background. The tension between them is palpable, but Clara tries to maintain a positive attitude. Later, the recording shows Clara and Lucas in the living room. Clara sits on the couch reading a book, while Lucas tries to play with his toys. He starts working on a puzzle, trying to fit the pieces together. Clara occasionally glances at him, offering tips, but her patience quickly wears thin. Instead of encouraging, her observations are often interrupted by expressions of frustration or hurried comments. Lucas, visibly uncomfortable with Clara's attitude, begins to withdraw. He gets up and moves to the corner of the room, where he starts playing with an electronic game. Clara, irritated, stands up and begins tidying the room, casting critical glances at what she sees as a mess. The contrast between her energy and Lucas's reserved behavior is evident. In the early afternoon, the camera captures Clara and Lucas engaged in household activities. Clara is teaching Lucas how to tidy up his toys and organize his books. She speaks to him in a strict manner, and on several occasions, her tone rises when Lucas does not follow her instructions exactly as she expects. Lucas, clearly unmotivated, complies without protest, but his body is tense, and he frequently glances at the clock, eager to finish the task. Later, the recording shows the homework session. Clara sits next to Lucas, helping him with his schoolwork. She tries to be helpful, but her focus is clearly more on speed than on the quality of support. When Lucas makes a mistake, she corrects him with a coldness that seems to discourage any attempt at conversation or questions on his part. As the afternoon turns into evening, the camera shows Clara preparing dinner. Lucas sits at the table, drawing in his notebook. Clara occasionally glances at him, but her attention is primarily on preparing the meal. She sets the plates on the table with a certain lack of enthusiasm. And when dinner is ready, she calls Lucas to eat. During the meal, the atmosphere remains tense. Clara tries to ask questions about Lucas's day, but he responds with monosyllables, clearly more interested in finishing the meal quickly. Clara, frustrated, tries to initiate a conversation about a TV show they both watched, but Lucas shows little interest. The interaction is cold and formal, with Clara trying to maintain the conversation, but without real success. As the evening approaches, Clara and Lucas watch a movie in the living room. Clara is on the couch, while Lucas sits in a corner, distracted. The movie plays, and their interactions are minimal. Clara makes an effort to seem engaged, but the absence of real dialogue and the ongoing discomfort between them are evident. As the night draws to a close and Lucas prepares for bed, Clara helps him brush his teeth and get ready to sleep. The ritual is done efficiently, but without much affection or attention. Clara gives Lucas a quick kiss on the forehead and tucks him into bed. Lucas, lying down, stares at the ceiling, visibly tired and troubled. Mid-week, the atmosphere in the house begins to shift subtly, and the strategically placed camera in the living room starts to capture signs of tension slowly building. What once seemed like a calm and controlled environment is now marked by small conflicts and growing discomfort. What had seemed like a normal routine starts to reveal cracks in the new family dynamic. The once peaceful mornings begin to show a noticeable change. Clara, now less patient, moves through the house with an expression of haste and frustration. As she prepares breakfast, there is a sense of urgency in her movements. She sets the table quickly, placing the dishes and cutlery with a bit more force than usual. The smell of coffee and the clatter of utensils are now accompanied by a heavier silence. When Lucas comes down for breakfast, his expression is one of fatigue and perhaps a bit of apprehension. He sits at the table without much enthusiasm, and Clara, instead of greeting him with her usual warmth, speaks with a tone that mixes impatience and urgency. "Come on, Lucas, wake up. Breakfast is ready. We need to leave on time so you won't be late for school," she says, her voice carrying an underlying tension. Lucas, with his eyes still heavy from sleep, tries to hurry, but his effort only seems to heighten the discomfort. Throughout the day, the tension between Clara and Lucas becomes more apparent. The camera captures small moments of conflict that were almost imperceptible before. In one of these scenes, Clara is teaching Lucas how to organize his toys. She is visibly irritated by the mess and Lucas' slowness in tidying things up. "You've spent too much time on this. If you don't finish soon, you won't be able to play later," she says in a harsh tone, provoking a look of sadness and discomfort on Lucas's face. Lucas's discomfort is palpable. Where he once seemed hesitant, he now shows a clear reluctance to follow Clara's instructions. He tries to speed up, but he appears increasingly frustrated and anxious. The atmosphere grows tense, with Clara casting critical looks and Lucas avoiding eye contact, as if trying to protect himself from the rising tension. During playtime, the atmosphere is equally strained. Clara and Lucas are in the living room, where Lucas is trying to focus on a board game. Clara, who was initially engaged and encouraging, now shows increasing irritation with Lucas's slowness or lack of interest. She makes discouraging comments about the game and Lucas' behavior. "You should have finished this a long time ago. Why are you taking so long?" she asks, her voice now more impersonal and critical. Lucas, visibly uncomfortable, tries to avoid the pressure. He curls up on the sofa, staying quiet and diverting his gaze to the corner of the room. His posture reveals his desire to avoid confrontation, and he seems increasingly withdrawn, with the fun he once found in his activities replaced by a feeling of discomfort. As the day comes to an end, the tension is also evident during meals. Clara serves dinner with cold efficiency, and the atmosphere at the table is heavy. She asks Lucas about his day, but the conversation quickly turns into a battlefield. When Lucas hesitates or gives vague answers, Clara doesn't hesitate to press him. "Can't you just tell me how your day was? Do you always have to be so reserved?" Lucas, his voice trembling and his head down, tries to avoid the conversation. He struggles to eat quickly, his discomfort evident with every bite. Dinner, which should be a time for connection, is marked by a sense of alienation and unease. Despite her attempts to maintain normalcy, Clara can't hide her growing irritation, and the mood at the table becomes tense and uncomfortable. At night, the camera shows Clara getting Lucas ready for bed. The bedtime routine, which was once soothing, is now filled with palpable tension. Clara helps Lucas with his teeth brushing, but their interaction is mechanical and cold. She doesn't exchange kind or encouraging words, only instructing him to go to bed quickly. Lucas lies in bed with a tired and disheartened expression, his discomfort visible in every movement. With the house silent and the camera still rolling, the day ends. The footage shows that, although the routine continues outwardly as normal, the interaction between Clara and Lucas is becoming increasingly strained. The growing tension, visible in the small arguments and Lucas's discomfort, reveals a more complex situation than initially thought. The environment is far from harmonious, and the family dynamics are clearly in a state of rising turbulence. The situation in the house starts to deteriorate alarmingly, and the tension between Clara and Lucas reaches a critical point. The environment, which once seemed relatively stable, is now full of frustration and despair. The camera, still recording, captures a decisive and distressing moment that makes it clear just how serious the situation has become. It's a quiet afternoon when the incident happens. The sunlight streams through the kitchen window, casting a soft glow over the room. Clara is in the kitchen, preparing a snack for Lucas. The atmosphere seems calm, but beneath the surface, Clara's frustration is about to boil over. Lucas enters the kitchen, carrying his favorite snack, a cookie he had left out, now a bit crumbled. As he walks into the kitchen, Lucas tries to place the cookie on the table without making much noise. However, he accidentally drops a few crumbs on the floor. Clara, finishing up the snack preparation, notices the accident. Her expression quickly shifts from neutral to irritated. She's not just annoyed by the mess. Her pent-up frustration seems to find a target in Lucas. Clara turns swiftly, her eyes filled with growing anger. She takes a deep breath, and in a raised, uncontrolled tone, she begins to yell at Lucas. "How can you be so careless? Look at the mess you made. Can't you do anything right?" The sound of her voice is sharp and full of rage. Each word cuts through the silence with alarming intensity. Lucas, scared and completely disoriented, tries to defend himself, but his words come out as trembling whispers. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It was an accident." However, his apologies are drowned out by Clara's anger. She continues to yell, accusing him of being sloppy and irresponsible, disproportionate to the small accident that had occurred. Her shouts echo through the house, and the tension is palpable. With tears starting to form in his eyes, Lucas curls up in a corner of the kitchen, trying to protect himself from Clara's flood of words and fury. The sadness and fear on his face are evident. He tries to clean up the cookie crumbs from the floor, but his hands are shaking, making the task even harder. His attempt to fix the mistake only seems to fuel Clara's frustration, who continues to berate him verbally. Finally, Lucas can't take it anymore. He quickly stands up, his tears now falling freely, and leaves the kitchen. His steps are hurried and desperate, and he runs to his room, slamming the door behind him with a bang that echoes through the house. The sound of the door slamming is a symbol of his need to escape that oppressive and painful situation. Once in his room, Lucas locks himself in, sitting in a corner of the bed with his knees pulled to his chest. The room is dark, with only the soft light from the bedside lamp illuminating his anguished face. The tears continue to stream down his cheeks as he tries to process the anger and fear he has just experienced. He hugs himself, seeking some comfort and safety amidst the emotional chaos. While Lucas retreats to his room, the camera focuses on Clara, who is still in the kitchen. Now, without Lucas's presence, she begins to feel a wave of regret and exhaustion. Her shoulders droop, and the expression on her face reflects frustration mixed with a growing sense of remorse. She mechanically begins to clean up the mess on the floor, her movements heavy and disheartened. Clara sits down at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, trying to regain control over her emotions. The words she hurled at Lucas echo in her mind, and she begins to grasp the gravity of her reaction. The silence in the house now serves as a painful reminder that something is deeply wrong. Guilt and frustration mingle, creating a burden she has yet to figure out how to carry or confront. When João returns from his business trip, he is eager to see his family and relax in the comfort of his home. However, upon arrival, his first priority is to check the footage from the camera he had installed. He needs to understand what's happening between Clara and Lucas in his absence, hoping to find clues that might explain the growing tension his son had mentioned before the trip. João enters the house, which now seems strangely quiet. He immediately notices the absence of the usual liveliness that accompanied the family's daily routine. With a growing sense of unease, he heads to the office where the camera is connected to a recording system. His heart races as he prepares to watch the footage, aware of the responsibility he carries and concerned about Lucas's well-being. With a nervous click, João starts playing the recordings. The first thing he sees is the daily routine of Clara and Lucas. The footage shows Clara preparing meals, helping Lucas with his homework, and trying to engage in activities with him. At first, everything seems normal. João watches as Clara attempts to be the attentive stepmother he had hoped for, but he soon realizes that something is off. As he progresses through the videos, the tension becomes apparent. He sees Clara, visibly frustrated, trying to handle the small challenges of everyday life. What seemed like minor irritation now reveals a growing strain. The camera captures moments where Clara is clearly impatient, her gestures and tone of voice showing a mounting frustration with Lucas. João, with his heart in his throat, reaches the critical point in the recordings. He witnesses the exact moment when Clara loses her temper. The scene is painful to watch. Clara is in the kitchen, her expression now clearly angry. João watches with a rising sense of dread as Clara yells at Lucas over a small accident. Her words are harsh and aggressive, each shout like a punch to the gut. What makes the scene even more disturbing is Lucas's reaction. João sees his small son, tears in his eyes, trying to shrink away and escape Clara's fury. The image of Lucas crying and retreating to his room is particularly heartbreaking. He sees the look of helplessness and sadness on Lucas's face, his attempt to shield himself from the verbal attack, and the way he seeks comfort in his own space, away from Clara's aggression. Every scene, every shout, and every tear from Lucas has a devastating effect on João. He sees clearly the lack of empathy and the aggressiveness in Clara. which starkly contrasts with the image he had of her as a devoted stepmother. The sense of shock and horror is palpable. Juwon realizes that the recordings not only confirm his worst fears, but also reveal a dimension to the problem he hadn't imagined. Sitting in the dimly lit office, Juwon feels overwhelmed. The footage is a clear testament to the deteriorating relationship between Clara and Lucas, and he knows he must act quickly. What once seemed like a minor issue now reveals itself to be a serious and urgent matter. The sight of Lucas crying and trying to hide is a painful reminder that his son is suffering, and the situation must be addressed immediately. Juwon also notices the moment after the aggressive episode when Clara is alone in the kitchen, her expression a mix of regret and frustration. He watches as Clara tries to clean up the mess, her movements now slow and dispirited. It's a moment of introspection for Clara, but for Juwon, it's a clear sign that the situation has spiraled out of control and that something needs to be done to set things right. After reviewing the footage, Juwon is determined to confront Clara about what he has seen. He knows this is a crucial conversation that could determine the future of his family. The sun is starting to set, casting a soft golden light through the window of the living room, where Juwon decides to have the conversation. He seeks a balance between the need to be firm and the importance of approaching the situation with sensitivity. Juwon takes a deep breath, feeling the mounting pressure on his shoulders. He heads to the living room, where Clara is busy with household tasks, trying to maintain an air of normalcy. He calls her in a calm but firm tone. "Clara, we need to talk about something serious. Please come here." Clara, who was in the kitchen organizing a few things, raises an eyebrow and, with a questioning look, follows him to the living room. She tries to keep her composure, but the anxiety is visible in her eyes. She can already sense that this will not be a light conversation. Juwon begins with a voice that mixes concern and seriousness. "Clara, I watched the footage from the camera I installed in the house. What I saw was very concerning. I want you to explain to me what is going on." He is direct, but tries to stay calm to prevent the conversation from becoming more confrontational. Clara initially tries to stay calm, but her face begins to show signs of tension. "I don't understand what you're insinuating, Juwon. I've done my best to adapt to this new situation and take care of Lucas. He's a difficult child, and sometimes things just get out of hand." She speaks with a defensiveness that doesn't go unnoticed. Juwon, already prepared for a defensive response, starts showing the footage on a laptop screen. He fast-forwards to the critical moment, the argument in the kitchen and Clara's aggressive behavior. "Look at these images, Clara. This isn't about him being difficult. It's about how you're reacting to him. What I saw was aggression that can't be justified." Clara, upon seeing the footage, tries to justify her actions. "I was stressed and frustrated, but that doesn't mean I didn't care about Lucas. I just couldn't handle the situation the way I wanted to." Her voice is beginning to betray her own insecurity. As the conversation progresses, the tension in the room becomes palpable. Clara starts to grow more agitated and defensive. "You have no idea what it's like to live with him every day. It's easy for you to judge when you're not here. I was trying my best, and yes, I lost my temper. But who hasn't lost their temper?" Juwon, frustrated and distressed, responds firmly. "I'm not saying it's easy, Clara, but what I saw in those recordings is unacceptable. You need to understand that Lucas is a child going through a very difficult situation, and he doesn't deserve to be treated like that." The conversation becomes increasingly charged with emotion. Clara begins to feel that her justifications are not being accepted and that the situation is spiraling out of control. She raises her voice, her tone becoming more accusatory. "So, what do you want me to do? Apologize for being human? Apologize for having moments of weakness? And what are you going to do now, Juwon? Fire me? Break us up?" João feels the impact of Clara's words and realizes that the situation is escalating to a critical point. He tries to stay strong, but the tension is becoming almost unbearable. "I'm not saying you need to be perfect, Clara, but we need a solution for this. I can't allow Lucas to keep being treated this way." The atmosphere in the room is heavy with frustration and sadness. João and Clara are now on opposite sides of a vast emotional chasm. The conversation is not leading to a resolution. Instead, it's deepening the cracks in their relationship. João's heartbreak over seeing his son suffer mixes with a sense of betrayal toward Clara. Clara, feeling attacked and helpless, starts to pull away. She stands up and, with a heavy sigh, says, "I need some time to think." She walks away to the bedroom, leaving João alone in the room, with the feeling of an unfinished task and a situation more complicated than he had imagined. Now, alone in the room, João feels crushed by the weight of the decisions he must make. He sits on the couch, looking at the images still on the laptop screen. The sound of the house, once the backdrop of family routine, now seems like a distant echo amid his despair. As the hours pass, João's primary concern remains Lucas's well-being. He remembers his son's words, the expressions of fear and sadness, and the visible impact Clara's behavior had on him. João knows that protecting Lucas and ensuring he feels safe and loved must come before any other consideration. João sat in his favorite armchair in the living room, the soft morning light filtering through the curtains, creating a peaceful setting. But his mind was far from calm. The image of Lucas crying, the palpable tension in the moments captured by the camera, weighed on his shoulders like an unbearable burden. Every tear from his son, every gesture of despair, seemed to cry out for protection, and João felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. With a heavy heart, João begins to reflect deeply on the situation. He remembers Lucas's smile, his small victories and challenges, and how much he needs to feel safe and loved. Clara's behavior, despite her frustrated attempts to deal with the new family dynamics, cannot be ignored. João understands that the absolute priority is to ensure Lucas has a stable and nurturing environment. He knows the decision he's about to make is painful and will have significant repercussions for everyone involved. He stands up, determined to act. Deep in his mind, the certainty solidifies. Clara needs to leave the house, at least for a while, so Lucas can have a chance to recover emotionally. João doesn't do this out of anger or revenge, but with the firm conviction that his son's safety and well-being are non-negotiable. This decision is not just about protection, but also about creating a space where Lucas can rebuild his trust and feel loved and safe again. As João prepares to communicate his decision to Clara, he feels a mixture of sadness and resolve. He thinks about the words he will use and tries to find a balance between honesty and sensitivity. João moves through the house, organizing his thoughts. He knows that despite her flaws, Clara is still an important part of his life, and perhaps of Lucas's too. But what he saw in the recordings cannot be ignored. Finally, João sits at the kitchen table, where he and Clara used to share everyday moments. He waits for her, feeling the weight of the hours spent thinking about the best way to approach the situation. When Clara enters the kitchen, looking tired and uncertain, João sees that she too is carrying the tension of the situation. "Clara, we need to talk," João begins, his voice firm but with a tone of concern. He tries to stay calm as he watches Clara sit at the table, her eyes searching to understand what is coming. João takes a deep breath and states his decision. "After reviewing the recordings, I realized that the situation with Lucas is beyond what I expected. The behavior you showed was not appropriate, and I cannot allow Lucas to continue living under this tension. I have decided that you need to leave the house for a while." The words land heavily, like a stone in the silent room. Clara seems stunned, her face contorting between surprise and pain. "You're throwing me out?" After everything I tried to do, I was doing the best I could." Her voice is full of shock and a tinge of anger. João feels the emotional impact of Clara's words but remains firm. "I understand that you tried, but what I saw in the recordings is not something I can ignore. I need to ensure Lucas has a space where he can feel safe and where he can heal." Clara tries to argue, but João's decision seems unwavering. "You can't just throw all of this away. I was trying to adapt, trying to be a good stepmother." The conversation becomes more charged, and João watches as Clara begins to gather her things with a defeated expression. He feels a heavy weight in his chest, but knows that the decision, painful as it is necessary for Lucas's well-being. Clara, in tears, grabs some of her personal belongings and prepares to leave the house. Every move she makes is filled with deep sadness and a sense of loss. With Clara finally out of the house, João immediately turns his attention to Lucas. He finds his son in his room, sitting in the corner of the bed, still processing the new reality. João approaches with a look of understanding and concern. "Lucas, I'm here for you. We'll work together to help you feel better." He sits next to Lucas and hugs him, seeking to comfort his son and show that he is there to protect and love him. João's presence is a relief for Lucas, who clings to his father with a sigh of relief and security. After the emotional turmoil caused by Clara's departure, the house now feels calm, but also filled with uncertainty. João and Lucas are facing a new challenge, rebuilding their lives and restoring family harmony. This period of adjustment is not easy, but it's an opportunity for healing and growth. The house, once filled with tension and discomfort, is now a place where João and Lucas try to adapt to the new reality. João works hard to create a welcoming and peaceful environment for Lucas, but he knows that recovery goes beyond simply adjusting the physical space. Emotional and psychological work is needed to heal the wounds left by the recent experience. Recognizing the need for professional support, João decides to seek family counseling. He contacts a therapist specializing in family dynamics and childhood trauma. The decision to seek professional help comes from a genuine desire to better understand Lucas's needs and find effective ways to restore his trust and emotional well-being. The first therapy sessions are a mix of anticipation and nervousness. João and Lucas sit in the waiting room of the therapist's office, a calm and comfortable place designed to promote trust and safety. Lucas, still a little hesitant, holds his father's hand tightly, seeking comfort in the familiar touch. The therapist, a woman with a soft and welcoming voice, begins the session with open-ended questions, allowing Lucas to express his feelings freely and without pressure. João watches closely, his heart heavy, understanding the depth of the pain Lucas had felt. During the sessions, Lucas begins to open up more about his feelings and fears. He shares how Clara's presence, despite her good intentions, had caused him anxiety and insecurity. The therapist uses cognitive behavioral therapy techniques to help Lucas identify and express his emotions in a healthy way. João, in turn, actively participates in the sessions, learning strategies to better support his son. He learns the importance of listening without judgment, validating Lucas's feelings, and creating a constantly supportive environment. In addition to the therapy sessions, João and Lucas begin to incorporate therapeutic activities into their daily routine. They start dedicating time to activities they both enjoy, like walks in the park, reading together, and games that help strengthen their bond. These activities are more than just pastimes. They are precious moments of connection and rebuilding trust. Over time, Lucas begins to show visible signs of improvement. He becomes more open and smiling, participating enthusiastically in family activities. His confidence, once shaken, starts to restore, and he feels increasingly comfortable in the environment he now considers safe. João and Lucas develop a new understanding and deeper connection. João realizes that building trust is not just about providing physical safety, but also being emotionally present and available for his son. He continues to offer support and actively listen, creating a space where Lucas can express his concerns and feelings without fear. As therapy and time help Lucas heal, João also reflects on the impact of the incident on his own life. He recognizes the importance of taking care of himself, emotionally and mentally, to be a more effective father. João dedicates himself to better understanding family dynamics and improving his parenting skills to provide the best possible environment for his son. After a period of distance, Clara decides it's time to make a significant change in her life. She understands that regaining the trust of João and Lucas will not be an easy task, but she is determined to do whatever it takes to demonstrate her commitment to change and reconciliation. Clara begins her transformation journey with a process of deep self-reflection. She seeks professional help, not only to understand her mistakes, but also to identify the aspects of her personality and behavior that need change. In her therapy sessions, Clara is confronted with her own insecurities and the negative impact she had on Lucas. She works to understand the roots of her impatience and rigidity, exploring how her own life experiences may have influenced her behavior. The therapy sessions are challenging and revealing. Clara faces difficult moments of introspection, but also discovers aspects of herself that need work. She learns anger management techniques and strategies for handling stressful situations more constructively. This process of self-reflection is not just about changing behavior, but also about transforming the way she views herself and others. Clara first tries to reconnect with João, seeking to establish an open and honest dialogue. She asks him for a meeting where she sincerely expresses her desire to change and make amends. João, I know I made mistakes, and I understand that trust isn't rebuilt overnight, but I'm willing to do the necessary work to change. I want you and Lucas to see that I'm committed to this transformation. João, though cautious, listens to Clara with an open mind. He acknowledges her effort, but still feels the need to observe actions and concrete changes before making any decisions. He asks Clara to continue her process of change and to show, through consistent actions, that she is committed to rebuilding her relationship with Lucas. With João's permission, Clara tries to reconnect with Lucas, but she knows that the approach must be made with great care and sensitivity. Clara begins to get involved in activities that Lucas enjoys, such as games and outings, always respecting the boy's space and boundaries. She also participates in some family therapy sessions, where she demonstrates her commitment to understanding and supporting Lucas in his healing process. One Saturday afternoon, Clara organizes an outing to the park, something Lucas always enjoyed. She is attentive and patient, giving Lucas space to express his feelings without pressuring him. Clara tries to show that, while she is trying to regain his trust, Lucas's well-being and happiness are the most important things. During these encounters, Clara also dedicates herself to learning about Lucas's activities and interests, actively participating in the things he enjoys and showing genuine interest in his world. She tries to rebuild the relationship step by step, without forcing an immediate reconciliation, but demonstrating her willingness to be a positive and supportive presence. As time passes, Clara and Lucas begin to find a new balance. The interactions between them are smoother and less filled with tension. Clara continues to demonstrate her changes through concrete and consistent actions. She strives to show Lucas that she is committed to building a new relationship based on respect and empathy. João watches the interactions between Clara and Lucas with a critical eye, but also with hope. He sees Clara's genuine effort and notices the positive changes. Although there is still mistrust, he begins to recognize the value of her attempts to rebuild trust. The path to reconciliation is not linear and is full of challenges. There are moments when progress seems stalled, and moments when old behavior may resurface. Clara faces these difficulties with courage and persistence, always seeking to learn from each situation and continue working on her personal changes. Lucas, in turn, begins to feel more comfortable expressing his feelings and expectations toward Clara. He sees her effort and starts to respond more positively, though with reservations. Trust is a process that takes time, and Lucas understands that Clara's actions are shaping a new reality for him. Over time, the relationship between Clara and Lucas begins to transform. Clara's patience and continuous effort show results, and the dynamic between them becomes more harmonious. Clara and Lucas begin to share moments of joy and build new memories together, showing that despite the difficulties, it is possible to create a new beginning. The full reconciliation is still in process, but the story of Clara, João, and Lucas is a powerful example of how personal effort and the willingness to change can lead to the building of healthier and more meaningful relationships. Their journey is proof that, with determination and empathy, it is possible to overcome challenges and create a more promising and harmonious future.